A couple of weeks ago, we're looking at the Bears. 3-3, couple straight losses to the Dolphins, Patriots. Looking at it as a critical moment in time for the Bears season. 2 more games against the AFC East, 2 more games against the weaker links of the AFC East. If the Bears had any thoughts and illusions of making a season out of it, making a run at the playoffs, potentially making a run at the NFC North title, they had to make sure that they righted the ship a past 2 weeks. We all knew this, facing off against the Jets, the Bills. They really were. I talked about it last week with the Jets game. It was an absolute must-win for the Bears. There's no question about that. And in a lot of ways, this Bills game also felt like it was must-win. If you can't handle your business on the road against a lesser opponent, which the Bills clearly were, then you're not a playoff team. It is that simple. If you can't go in there with a team starting Nathan Peterman at quarterback and go kick the ever-loving crap out of them, you have no business being talked about as a playoff team. You have no business thinking in any way that you have a chance to win your division. Especially when you look at the way the Bears have lost their games this year, you feel in some ways like they've let games slip through the cracks, that they've had opportunities to win every game that they've been in this year, and a couple of times have failed to do so and kind of, frankly, pissed it down their legs. Well, these last 2 weeks, they had a chance to kind of right the ship and reshift the focus going into the last 8 games, the second half of the season. And the Bears played with urgency on Sunday. They absolutely did. You forced 3 turnovers in the first half, 4 of them total. You take 2 of those turnovers back to the house for touchdowns. You're up 28-0 at halftime. It eliminates all doubt. This is what a good team should do. Go on the road to a place with a team with an okay defense, but a terrible offense and horrible quarterback play, and you should be able to kick the crap out of them at halftime where there's no doubt whatsoever. What was impressive to me about this Bears game on Sunday was that the Bears went in there and did exactly what they're supposed to do. They left no doubt early. They reminded the Bills of who their daddy was on Sunday repeatedly in that first half over and over and over again. The longer you allow a team like the Bills to stay in the mix, the longer you allow a team like the Bills to think they have a chance, they might actually have the chance. But the Bears left no doubt and took care of business and ended up winning 41-9. So now you're looking at the Bears and you say 2 straight wins, back at 5-3, leading the division, halfway through the season. You feel good about things. Sure, there are concerns, and sure, there are things to worry about. And you've got Minnesota breathing down their necks, and Minnesota is a really good team. But the Bears are in play. They have a chance. And in a lot of ways, you can argue they control their destiny in the NFC North, being the division leaders halfway through the season. And what I like about this game is, while Trubisky wasn't great, he didn't really need to be. Jordan Howard punched in a couple of touchdown runs. The Bears' running game wasn't great, but again, it didn't need to be. They found different ways to win. Shutting down the Bills' offense, forcing turnovers early and often. You go on the road and you win the playoff, not the playoff, but the turnover battle. More often than not, you were going to find ways to win the game. And it was those turnovers that made it a non-factor very early on. The Bills never had a chance. And for the Bears to win the second straight week without Khalil Mack, their best player on either side of the ball, and Allen Robinson, their arguably top receiver and one of the perhaps 5 best players on their team, to have 2 of your stars or big names, your key acquisitions from this offseason, who are supposed to mean so much to your offense and defense respectively, in Robinson and Mack, and be able to win games comfortably without them, should, if anything, give this Bears unit, offensively and defensively, a team as a whole, some confidence going into the second half of the season. That they're not just star-driven on defense with Khalil Mack. And you could say, sure, they're playing against a rookie quarterback with a lack of supporting cast in the Jets and Sam Darnold. True. They played the Bills, who started Nathan Peterman at quarterback. What more needs to be said? But the bottom line is, you still have to play those games. You still have to handle your business. And the Bears absolutely handled their business the last 2 weeks without 2 of their best players. And I feel like that's a positive, and that points to the coaching staff having the team prepared to play, and that points to the players rallying around each other and making sure that they took care of business and didn't allow the loss of a star here and a star there to negatively impact them. So it was a nice feeling watching that game on Sunday. There was never any doubt, and it feels good. There's some expectations there as a Bears fan this year. What type of expectations? How far can those expectations carry them? Maybe remains to be seen. But it's a different feeling. It's a nice feeling. It's a weird feeling, honestly. And now you look at this Bears team, because the game kind of was what it was. There's not a whole lot to talk about. You look at them, they're 5-3, leading the NFC North. You look at their remaining schedule. Next up, they host Detroit. Then they turn around that following Sunday night, and they've got Minnesota at home. Huge game. But you can't overlook Detroit because divisional games, even at home, anything can happen. Then they've got to turn around since that Vikings game got flexed to prime time, which it should have. Unfortunately for the Bears, that means a few short days later, they're turning around on Thanksgiving in the early game and having to go to Detroit. Thank God they've got the Giants on the road the following week because what the hell are the Giants going to do? But then you look at the last few weeks of the season, it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of the schedule. They've got the Rams, one of the elite teams in the NFL, at home. They've got the Packers at home. The Bears showed they could beat them once, even though they didn't. They can beat them this time. Then they go to San Francisco and to Minnesota to close out the season. When you look at this Bears second half stretch of the schedule, in order to realistically think about the playoffs, you figure they've got to get to at least 10 wins. And where do those 5 wins come from? If the Bears can win their next 2 games, Detroit, Minnesota, maybe they lose a Thanksgiving game. You're still sitting there at 7-4. You feel pretty good. You can beat the Giants on the road. Now you're 8-4. Maybe you lose to the Rams. You're 8-5. You beat the Packers and they follow up the next week and beat San Francisco on the road. Now you're sitting at 10-5. And that game week 17 against Minnesota could potentially be for the division, or at least for the Bears could be about playoff positioning, getting into the playoffs, and who knows what could happen there. There's reason for some hope and some optimism here. Let's not get crazy. The Bears are not an elite team. The Bears are not quite ready fully for prime time just yet. But this is a good team. This is a playoff caliber team. But what they cannot afford to do is, in their remaining games, with 5 of them being against divisional opponents, they cannot sit there and go 2-3. They must beat Detroit at least once, they must beat Minnesota at least once, and they must beat Green Bay. If that does not happen, forget about it. Plain and simple. They're 8-8, 9-7, and they miss the playoffs, and you feel like opportunity kind of slipped through their fingertips. And especially when you look at the Bears not having a first-round pick next year because of the Khalil Mack trade, you'll want them to make the playoffs this year because there's no real major implications or connotations for that first-round draft pick. You're just dropping the number of the pick for the Raiders. In an ideal world, the Bears would be able to look at these next 3 games, Detroit, Minnesota, and then Detroit. In an ideal world, you'd love to win all 3 of them because now all of a sudden you're sitting there at 8-3. You would have won 5 games in a row. You got a road game against the Giants, and then you buckle up for the last 4 games of the year. That's kind of idealistic. That's kind of really reaching it hopeful here. Well, when you look at the schedule and the way it breaks out for the Bears, there is a path to 10 or 11 victories. There is a path to potentially not only making the playoffs, but winning this division. It's not going to be easy. It's not guaranteed. So it's time to sit back and buckle up and bear down, bitches! The Bears are playing meaningful football in November. It feels good.